Stephanie White is running a punishment operation inside the Indiana Fever locker room. That is not a metaphor. That is not hyperbole. That is the only accurate description of what we are watching unfold in real time, game by game, minute by minute, with Caitlin Clark, the most important player in the history of this franchise, sitting at the center of it all, watching her own coaching staff work against her. Welcome back. This is Rim Run, and today we are documenting the most deliberate, most baffling, most catastrophic act of self-sabotage in recent WNBA history. A head coach using playing time as a weapon against her own roster, against her own star, against her own organization's future. Caitlin Clark is on this team. Caitlin Clark is the reason this franchise has relevance right now. And Stephanie White is treating the players closest to Clark, Sophie Cunningham, Lexie Hull, the people who go to war for her every single night, like they are problems to be managed rather than assets to be deployed. Sit with that, because everything that follows is going to make that sentence feel like an understatement.
Lexie Hull continued to be thrown to the back burner by Stephanie White since day one before she even got here.
Let me set the table for every single person watching this video, because the full scope of what is happening in Indianapolis right now demands to be laid out clearly, without spin, without the softening language the establishment media uses when they don't want to say the uncomfortable thing out loud. The Indiana Fever came into this season with enormous expectations. Championship talk, real championship talk, not the vague aspirational kind, but the specific public organizational kind. And now, that language has vanished entirely. You do not hear the word championship coming out of this organization anymore. Not from the front office, not from the coaching staff. The ambition evaporated, and what replaced it is something far more troubling. A coaching staff that appears more invested in asserting internal authority than in winning basketball games. The Fever just barely escaped a Washington Mystics team that is openly, deliberately, shamelessly tanking. The Mystics are not trying to win, they have made that clear, and Indiana almost lost to them. Almost. That is the baseline we are working from. And now, on a game day against the Chicago Sky, a team sitting at 4 wins and 8 losses, the primary story is not about the matchup. The primary story is about what Stephanie White is about to do to Caitlin Clark's supporting cast. Again, Sophie Cunningham has already been punished. Her minutes were slashed in a way that had nothing to do with performance and everything to do with the fact that she, along with Caitlin Clark and Lexie Hull, went rogue. They went outside the system. They operated as a unit in a way that the coaching staff did not sanction, did not control, did not orchestrate. And the response from Stephanie White was not to lean into that chemistry. The response was to punish it. Sophie Cunningham's minutes took a hit, and now, according to everything we are seeing, Lexie Hull is next on that list. Let me walk you through the Lexie Hull situation specifically, because this is where the pattern becomes undeniable. And this is where Stephanie White's behavior stops looking like coaching decisions and starts looking like something else entirely. Lexie Hull was thrown to the back burner by this organization before she even arrived. That is not a post hoc reading of events. That is the sequence that actually happened. The Fever front office, under Stephanie White's influence, made promises, real, substantive promises, to DeWanna Bonner and Natasha Howard. Promises that were apparently the reason those players were targeted, the reason resources were allocated the way they were, the reason roster construction went in a particular direction. And then DeWanna Bonner took the money and left. She ran, and the Indiana Fever never got a real, coherent public explanation from Stephanie White about what happened, what was promised, or what the plan was supposed to be. What we know is this: Lexie Hull was collateral damage in that situation. She was the player who got squeezed out, pushed back, deprioritized, not because of anything she did wrong, not because of any performance failure, but because the front office had overcommitted to a vision that collapsed before it could be executed. And instead of correcting that, instead of saying, "We made a mistake, let's get Lexie Hull the minutes and the role she deserves," Stephanie White continued to treat her as a secondary option, as an afterthought, as someone who exists at the margins of the rotation rather than at the center of it. And now, after Lexie Hull, Sophie Cunningham, and Caitlin Clark operated together in a way that actually worked, in a way that showed genuine on-court chemistry and genuine competitive fire, the response from the coaching staff is to cut Hull's minutes further. We are talking about 6 minutes in the first half of the previous game. 6 minutes, for a player who is one of Caitlin Clark's most reliable allies on that floor. 6 minutes is not a rotation decision. 6 minutes is a message, and every single person watching this video knows exactly what that message says. Don't take my word for it. Here is the commentary record captured in real time on the day this game was being played.
Eyes, Lexi Hall continued to be thrown to the back burner by Stephanie White since day one before she even got here.
Lexi Hall continued to be thrown to the back burner by Stephanie White since day one before she even got here. That is the documented on-record assessment of what this coaching staff has been doing to one of Caitlin Clark's most important teammates. Not after one bad game, not after a pattern of poor performance. Since day one, before she even got here. That is what the record shows, and that is what makes the current minute slashing so ruthless, because it is not a correction, it is a continuation. Now let me give you the full picture of what Caitlin Clark is walking into today, because the context of the opponent matters when you understand that her own sideline is not fully in her corner. The Chicago Sky are 4-8. They are not a dominant team, but they are not a team you can dismiss, and here is why. They nearly beat the Atlanta Dream in their last outing. They had a legitimate shot to win that game. They pushed a better team to the absolute limit. So anyone who wants to walk into this matchup and say the Sky can't beat Indiana needs to account for the fact that Indiana almost lost to a team that is openly not trying to win games. The margin for error here is not as wide as the records suggest. The Sky are built around their guards. Skylar Diggins-Smith is their engine. She is giving you approximately 15 points and 4 assists. She is a veteran, she has seen everything, and she is sick of losing. When a player of that caliber is sick of losing, she becomes dangerous in a way that pure statistics do not capture. She will compete at a level that transcends her team's record. She will make you earn every single possession, and if Indiana's defense does not get a hold of her early, she will light them up. That is not a prediction, that is a pattern. Camila Cardoso is down low, giving you approximately 13 points and 9 rebounds. She is a physical presence that Aaliyah Boston has handled in their previous matchups, and that needs to continue. Boston winning that individual battle is a non-negotiable requirement for Indiana to control the interior. And then there is JC Sheldon. Let me be entirely clear about what JC Sheldon represents in this specific matchup. She is one of Caitlin Clark's most aggressive opponents. She plays a brand of defense that operates right at the edge of the rulebook, and she has a history with Clark that includes a specific incident when Sheldon was still with the Connecticut Sun and played in Indiana. Sheldon has not forgotten that. You can be certain of that. She is going to come into this game with something to prove, something to settle, and a willingness to use her physicality in ways that are going to require Clark to be alert, aware, and protected. And that last word, protected, is where the entire situation becomes genuinely alarming. Because Lexi Hall, one of Clark's primary protectors on that floor, is reportedly going to see her minutes slashed. The person who goes to war for Clark, who provides a physical presence on Clark's behalf, who makes opponents think twice before they try something reckless. That person is being benched by her own coach on a day when Clark is about to face one of her most aggressive opponents.
And we already know Caitlin Clark has already been being sabotaged by this front office from day one.
Let me walk you through the 4 things that Indiana needs to execute in this game, because even inside this organizational disaster, even with Stephanie White actively working against her own team's best interests, Caitlin Clark is still capable of delivering something extraordinary, and the requirements for that to happen are specific. The first and most important requirement is this. Caitlin Clark needs the basketball in her hands. That sounds obvious. That sounds like something that should not need to be said. But we have watched repeatedly and with our own eyes this coaching staff take the ball out of Clark's hands and put it in Kelsey Mitchell's hands, and then describe that decision as running things off ball for Caitlin Clark. Let me say that back to you so you do not miss it. They take the ball away from the most gifted offensive player on the roster, give it to someone else, and call that a system designed to help the player they just disarmed. That is the official narrative. That is what they are selling, and it is an absolute insult to the intelligence of everyone watching. When Caitlin Clark has the basketball, she makes magic. That is not sentiment. That is observation. Repeated, consistent, undeniable observation. She creates shots that do not exist on any whiteboard. She generates advantages for teammates who would otherwise never see an open look. She controls the pace and the temperature of an entire game from the point guard position. She is operating at a level that this franchise has never seen before, and the response from the coaching staff is to give the ball to Kelsey Mitchell, who, and this needs to be said plainly, is not going to pass it back. Kelsey Mitchell has shown a pattern of holding the ball, dribbling through the shot clock, taking contested shots in situations where the pass is clearly the right play. 15 to 18 dribbles on a single possession, the entire shot clock evaporating while the offense stands and watches. That is not a winning formula. That is not even a coherent formula. And the fact that the coaching staff keeps feeding into it, keeps designing the offense around it, keeps pulling the ball away from Clark to enable it, that is not a basketball decision. That is a power decision. The second requirement is real screens. Aaliyah Boston is earning $6 million per year. $6 million. And she cannot set a proper screen. She does not make contact. She drifts. She ghosts the pick. She goes through the motion of screening without actually impeding anyone. And the result is that Clark and Mitchell run off non-screens, get no separation, and have to create everything on their own against set defenses. Maisha Hines-Allen actually sets real picks. She makes contact, she holds position, she does the job. But Boston, who is the highest paid player on this roster for a reason, needs to bring that same physicality and commitment to the screening game. $6 million and you cannot set a pick that touches anybody. That is a failure of execution that is absolutely baffling at this level of professional basketball. The third requirement is Kelsey Mitchell passing the basketball. Mitchell did not score 20 points in the last game, and everyone who has watched her play knows what that means. She is going to come into this game hungry. She is going to be on a rampage to get her 20 points back, and there is a genuine risk that she puts up 23 or 24 shot attempts in the process. We have seen it before. We will see it again if nobody checks it. What Indiana needs from Mitchell today is not a scoring explosion. What Indiana needs is a team player who moves the ball, who recognizes when Clark is open, who understands that the best version of this offense runs through its best player. Pass the ball, Kelsey. That is the requirement. It is not complicated. The fourth requirement is defensive accountability on Chicago's guards. Skylar Diggins-Smith, Natasha Cloud, Gabriella Hawkins. This is a guard-driven team, and if Indiana does not establish defensive presence on those players early, the game becomes a grind that nobody wants. Diggins-Smith in particular needs to be respected. She is a veteran who knows how to exploit defensive lapses, and she is motivated in a way that pure record-based analysis would not predict. Now, I want to talk about the deeper pattern here, because this game, this specific game, on this specific day, is not the story. The story is what this game represents in the context of everything that has been building inside this organization. Stephanie White has been managing this roster in a way that prioritizes her own authority over the team's performance. That is the accusation stated plainly. And the evidence for it is not circumstantial. It is behavioral. It is visible. It shows up in minute allocations, in rotation decisions, in the deliberate reduction of playing time for players who have demonstrated on-court chemistry with Caitlin Clark. Sophie Cunningham is being punished. Lexi Hull is being punished. And the thing that connects both of them, the thing that apparently triggered the punishment, is that they went rogue with Clark. They operated outside the system. They played winning basketball in a way that was not sanctioned by the coaching staff, and the coaching staff responded by cutting their minutes. Think about what that means. Think about what it means for a head coach to see winning basketball happening on her floor and respond by punishing the players who produced it. That is not coaching. That is not strategy. That is an ego protection exercise dressed up as a rotation decision. And Caitlin Clark is the one paying the price, because every time a player who supports her gets benched, Clark is left more isolated, more vulnerable, more exposed to opponents like JC Sheldon who are coming in with specific, targeted aggression. Let me be entirely clear about the DeWanna Bonner and Natasha Howard situation, because it is the foundation of everything that followed. Promises were made. Real promises, the kind that shape roster construction, that influence how playing time is allocated, that determine which players get prioritized and which players get pushed to the margins. Those promises were made to DeWanna Bonner and Natasha Howard, and then Bonner left. She took the money and she went, and the Indiana Fever never got a coherent, public, honest explanation from Stephanie White about what happened. She never told us what the promises were. She never told us why the plan collapsed. She never told us what the fallout meant for the players who were already on the roster. Players like Lexi Hull, who were deprioritized to make room for a vision that evaporated before it could be executed. That silence is not neutral. That silence is the sound of an organization that does not believe it owes its fans or its players a real accounting of what happened. And Lexi Hull has been living with the consequences of that silence ever since, getting fewer minutes than her talent warrants, playing in a system that was never designed with her in mind, and now facing the prospect of being further punished because she had the audacity to play winning basketball alongside Caitlin Clark without explicit coaching staff approval. Here is the second receipt. Here is the assessment of what this front office has been doing to Caitlin Clark from the very beginning. Not as a recent development, not as a response to specific events, but as a consistent, ongoing pattern that started before the season even began.
Eyes, Lexi Hall continued to be thrown to the back burner by Stephanie White since day one before she even got here.
Caitlin Clark has already been being sabotaged by this front office from day one. Day one. Not game 10. Not after the losing streak. Not after some specific triggering incident. Day one. That is what the documented record says. That is what the pattern of behavior supports. And every rotation decision, every minute allocation, every benching of a Clark ally has to be understood in that context. Not as isolated coaching choices, but as chapters in a continuous story that started the moment Clark arrived in Indianapolis. Now let me tell you what I believe is going to happen, and what the stakes are if I am right. Stephanie White does not have unlimited runway here. The Indiana Fever are not a team that can absorb the cost of this dysfunction indefinitely. The Washington Mystics' near loss was a warning shot. The Chicago Sky game is a test. And if this team continues to underperform, if the minutes manipulation continues, if the ball keeps coming out of Clark's hands, if the screens stay soft and the offense stays broken, the pressure on this front office is going to become impossible to contain. Here is my first prediction. Lexi Hall's minutes in this game will be visibly deliberately reduced below what her performance record justifies. It will not be explained by matchup considerations. It will not be explained by foul trouble. It will be a coaching decision that sends a message, the same message Sophie Cunningham already received, that going rogue with Caitlin Clark has consequences. Watch for it. Count the minutes. The pattern will be right there on the box score for anyone who wants to see it. Here is my second prediction. Caitlin Clark will produce despite the system, not because of it. That is who she is. That is the level she operates at. Even when the ball is being funneled away from her, even when the screens are non-existent, even when her most reliable allies are being benched, she finds a way to make plays. She makes magic with that basketball, and the coaching staff's interference cannot fully suppress what she is capable of. But the question is not whether Clark will produce. The question is how much more she could produce if Stephanie White actually got out of her way and let the offense run through its best player. Here is my third prediction. JC Sheldon is going to come into this game with a specific agenda. She remembers what happened the last time she was in Indiana. She has not forgotten it. And with Lexi Hall's minutes reportedly being cut, with one of Clark's primary protectors potentially not even on the floor, Sheldon is going to test the edges of what she can get away with. She is going to be physical, she is going to be aggressive, and the question is whether the coaching staff has prepared Clark for that reality, or whether Clark is going to have to figure it out on her own while her support system sits on the bench. And here is what I want every single person watching this video to really sit with, because this is the part of the story that television will not tell you, that the official press releases will not acknowledge, that the establishment sports media will dance around without ever saying directly. Caitlin Clark is the most important thing that has happened to the Indiana Fever in the history of this franchise. She is the reason people are watching. She is the reason the tickets are selling. She is the reason this organization has any national relevance, any cultural footprint, any claim to being part of the conversation about what the WNBA can be. And the people running this franchise, the people who are supposed to be protecting that asset, nurturing that talent, building a winning culture around the most gifted player they have ever had, are instead running a punishment operation against the players who support her. That is the brutal, undeniable reality of what we are watching. Stephanie White is not building something. Stephanie White is managing something, managing it downward, managing it toward mediocrity, managing it in a way that prioritizes her own authority over the team's actual performance. And the cost of that management style is being paid by Caitlin Clark, who shows up every single game and competes at an elite level despite a coaching environment that is actively working against her. Think about what Caitlin Clark has already absorbed this season. The DeWanna Bonner situation and its aftermath. The promises that were made to other players and the way those promises distorted the roster construction. The Sophie Cunningham punishment. The Lexi Hall minute slashing. The ball being taken out of her hands and put into a system that does not serve her. The absence of proper screens from a $6 million center. The Kelsey Mitchell possession hoarding that eats shot clock and creates nothing. Clark has absorbed all of that, all of it, and she is still the most dangerous offensive player on that floor every single night. Imagine what she could do with a coaching staff that actually wanted her to succeed. Imagine what this offense looks like when the ball stays in her hands, when the screens are set with real force and real commitment, when her teammates are empowered to play winning basketball alongside her instead of being punished for it. Imagine the fever that could exist if Stephanie White got out of the way and let the best player in this organization's history actually play basketball. That version of the Indiana fever is not a fantasy. It is available. It is right there, visible in every possession where Clark has the ball and the defense scrambles and the offense breathes and the crowd comes alive. It is right there every time Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham are on the floor, and the chemistry between Clark's allies is firing on all cylinders. It is right there, and Stephanie White keeps choosing not to access it. The championship language is gone. The ambition has evaporated. What remains is a clown show. And I use that word deliberately, because what else do you call an organization that has the most exciting player in the league and is actively engineering her isolation? What else do you call a coaching staff that punishes winning basketball because it was not their winning basketball? What else do you call a front office that made promises it could not keep, watched its offseason plan collapse entirely, and responded by taking it out on the players who were already there? There is a clear divide in that locker room. That is not speculation. That is visible in every post-game presser, in every body language read, in every rotation decision that prioritizes internal politics over competitive performance. Caitlin Clark looks like a player who is competing in spite of her environment rather than because of it. And every single person watching these games, every fan, every analyst, every person paying attention can see it.
Eyes. Lexi Hull continued to be thrown to the back burner by Stephanie White since day one before she even got here.
Let me close with the verdict, because this situation demands one. Stephanie White and the Indiana Fever front office are running out of time to course correct. The near loss to a tanking Washington Mystics team was not a fluke, it was a symptom. It was the natural consequence of an organization that has been prioritizing internal power dynamics over basketball performance, that has been punishing chemistry instead of cultivating it, that has been taking the ball out of the hands of its best player and calling it a system. If the Fever lose to a 4-8 Chicago Sky team today, a team that, yes, pushed Atlanta to the limit, but is still a 4-8 team, the pressure on this coaching staff will become acute. It will become the kind of pressure that front offices eventually respond to, because the alternative is watching the most valuable player in franchise history spend her prime years fighting a two-front war, one against the opponent on the floor and one against the coaching staff on her own sideline. Caitlin Clark deserves better than this. She deserves a coaching staff that wants her to succeed. She deserves a head coach who looks at the chemistry between Clark, Cunningham, and Hull and says build on this instead of punish this. She deserves screens that actually make contact. She deserves a ball handler who passes the basketball. She deserves a front office that is honest about its failures, accountable for its broken promises, and committed to building something real around the most extraordinary talent this organization has ever possessed. Right now, she has Stephanie White. And that gap between what Clark deserves and what she has is the story. It has been the story since day one, and it will continue to be the story until either Stephanie White and this entire front office are removed, or Caitlin Clark finds a way out of an organization that has been moving in an absolute diabolical, catastrophic manner since the moment she arrived. Caitlin Clark is on that floor right now, lacing up her sneakers, preparing to go to war against J.C. Sheldon and the Chicago Sky, knowing that one of her primary protectors may not even get meaningful minutes tonight. She is going to compete anyway. She is going to make magic anyway, because that is who she is, relentless, fearless, and operating at a level that this franchise does not deserve. The question is not whether Clark is good enough. The question is whether this organization is good enough for her.
And we already know Caitlin Clark has already been being sabotaged by this front office from day one.
Here is your forced choice for the comments section, and I want a real answer. Do you believe Stephanie White needs to be fired before the end of this season? Or do you think the Fever front office needs to go first? The whole operation, top to bottom, replaced entirely. Pick one, not both. One. Because the conversation about who is more responsible for what is happening to Caitlin Clark in Indianapolis is one that this fanbase needs to have out loud, clearly, without the softening language. Drop your answer below. Tell me why. Tell me what you are seeing that the establishment sports media refuses to say. This is Rimrun. Hit that subscribe button, ring the notification bell so you never miss a video, and share this one with every Fever fan you know, because the conversation we are having right now is the conversation that matters. We will see you in the next one.